In 2026, tens of millions of Americans will move, and among them, some people are heading straight into a mistake. We're sold this sweet dream. Move somewhere cheaper, quieter, prettier, and life instantly gets easier. But some towns are cheap for a reason the brochure will never mention. Living conditions there are so bad that the hospital is gone, wildfire insurance is squeezing people dry, the air makes you tired just from breathing, or poverty runs so deep that grocery shopping turns into a survival mission. Today I'm breaking down the top 10 towns in America with the worst living conditions. And trust me, some places look great on paper, until the data and real life get the final word. The closer we get to number one, the more you'll understand why cheap is sometimes a warning siren. Number 10, Jackson, Wyoming. Picture this. You're in Jackson, Wyoming, and it feels like a screensaver came to life. Mountains, clean streets, fancy jackets. You think, yeah, this is where people come to breathe. Now, flip the postcard over, because behind the view is a daily sport nobody wants to play. Housing. The people making your breakfast, cleaning hotel rooms, fixing the pipes, staffing clinics, helping in schools. A lot of them spend more energy finding a bed than planning a future. Some end up commuting from outside the area because that's the only way the math works. Here's the math. The median household income in Jackson is about $112,609 a year. Solid, right? Funny thing is, in Jackson, $112,000 can feel like you brought a decent umbrella to a hurricane made of rent. And rent shows up like a surprise resort fee you didn't agree to. A typical two-bedroom has been quoted around $3,000 a month. New leases can start over $4,000. And yes, there have been outliers where someone pays as much as $9,000 a month for a three-bedroom. That's not renting an apartment. That's subscribing to shelter. Like it's Netflix premium, but the show is just you checking your bank account. In Teton County, the average two-bedroom rent has been cited around $3,354. The county cost of living index is about 176, and the housing index sits near 239. Translation: the prices are living at high altitude and your paycheck is down in the valley trying to catch its breath. So people say, fine, I'll just buy. Except buying here isn't a normal American dream, it's a luxury collectible. Zillow has put typical home values around $1.88 million. Median list prices have hovered near $2.98 million. Redfin has shown a median sale price around $2.30 million in late 2025. Realtor has talked about median listing prices around $3.25 million. In most towns, a starter home is where you start. In Jackson, a starter home is where you start. Looking at starter homes in another state. And here's the structural twist that keeps this from being an easy fix. Roughly 97% of Teton County is public land. Gorgeous, protected, and basically not turning into new neighborhoods anytime soon. It's like trying to solve a housing shortage in a place where almost everything is a national park. Beautiful, yes. Buildable, no. HUD's 2025 median family income for the county is roughly $99,050 for one person, $113,200 for two, and $141,500 for a family of four. Even with those incomes, a $3,000 to $4,000 rent doesn't feel like living. It feels like hanging on. Making six figures and still feeling broke is a special kind of American irony. Like ordering a salad and realizing it costs more than a steak. That's why Jackson makes this list. A paradise that runs on workers it can't comfortably house. And it leaves you with a weird question. What happens to a dream town when the dream is only affordable from the outside? Now imagine the same sticker shock, but add real isolation where basic supplies feel like a mission. That's the next town. Number 9, Bethel, Alaska. Picture this. You're in a grocery aisle in Bethel, Alaska, staring at a price tag like it just challenged you to a duel. And then it clicks. You can't even drive somewhere cheaper. Bethel is the biggest rural city in Alaska that's off the road system. You get in and out by plane or by the Kuskokwim River. So everything you buy basically arrives with its own travel story, which is why those $10 milk stories pop up online. Here's the number that hits first. The USDA's Thrifty Food Plan for a family of 4 in Anchorage is about $1,277 a month as of December 2025. Rural 2 Alaska, which is the bucket places like Bethel fall into, runs about 56% higher. That's roughly $2,000 a month for the Thrifty Plan. Thrifty as in pasta again, and we're calling it meal prep. Then comes housing. Alaska's rental survey puts a 2-bedroom in the Bethel census area at about $2,075 a month, utilities included. That's not cozy small-town money. That's my rent costs, more than my hobbies money. Now zoom out to income. Alaska Labor Stats put the average annual wage in the Bethel area around $52,400 in 2023, with per capita personal income around $48,800. On paper, that can sound workable. But stack it next to about $2,000 for food and over $2,000 for rent, and your paycheck starts doing that magic trick where it shows up and disappears in the same scene. And it gets tougher when work isn't guaranteed. The unemployment rate for the Bethel census area was about 10.8% in 2024. So it's not just things are expensive, it's things are expensive while a lot of people are fighting for steady hours. Even buying a house doesn't feel like an escape hatch. Alaska's single-family loan activity data shows an average sales price around $391,200 in 2024 for Bethel. In a lot of America, that's a family home with a driveway and a grill. In Bethel, it's a reminder that remote can be its own kind of tax. So what does worst living conditions look like here? It doesn't look like chaos. It looks like math. It looks like parents planning meals around shipping schedules. It looks like workers stacking jobs because one paycheck can't carry a town where everything has to fly in. And it also looks like a community that still shows up for each other, because out here, that's not a slogan. And if you think paying big city prices in the middle of nowhere is wild, the next town on our list shows a different kind of shock, where the struggle isn't just what things cost, it's whether basic needs are reliably within reach. Number 8. Pine Ridge, South Dakota. All right, number 8 is Pine Ridge, South Dakota. And this one hits different because the worst living conditions here don't show up as one big dramatic moment. It shows up as something quieter, like trying to buy dinner. Pine Ridge sits in Oglala, Lakota County, and feeding America's map, the meal gap has put this county at the top of the list for food insecurity, around 29%. Think about that. In the United States, in 2025-ish America, that's basically 3 out of every 10 people living with the question, are we going to have enough? Now here's the part that feels unreal until you picture it. A lot of the time, the problem isn't that people don't want healthy food. The problem is that the food isn't there, or it's priced like a luxury. Reporting about Pine Ridge has described it as a food desert with basically one full-service grocery store. One for a huge area. And when there's only one main option, the prices can do whatever they want. That same reporting described everyday items running 20% to 100% higher than what you'd see at big chain stores. So you're not just choosing between apples and chips. You're choosing between fresh food and keeping the lights on. So people say, okay, go where it's cheaper, and sure, the catch is the nearest Walmart is about 55 miles away in Chadron, Nebraska. If you have a car, that's a long errand. If you don't have a car, it becomes a whole negotiation. The same reporting mentioned people paying around $25 just to catch a ride. Imagine your grocery trip starting with a transportation fee, like going to buy bread and first you have to tip the universe. And this doesn't happen in a vacuum. The county's poverty rate is about 52.8%, and the median household income sits around $34,770. So even a normal grocery bill can feel like a punch. A higher-priced grocery store in a low-income place is basically a trap made out of math. Here's my neutral take. This isn't a story about personal choices. It's a story about access. When food is far away, when prices are inflated, when transportation is expensive, people end up buying what they can reach and what they can stretch. That's not laziness, that's survival economics. One Reddit comment about reservations said it bluntly. Sometimes it's cheaper, closer, and easier to get beer than it is to get food on Pine Ridge. That's a harsh line, but it explains the feeling. Your basic needs are harder to reach than the stuff that hurts you. So Pine Ridge makes the list because daily life can feel like living inside a supply problem. Not because people don't care, but because the system makes caring expensive. And if you think a food desert is shocking, the next town shows a different kind of cliff, where nature itself keeps raising the price of staying. Number 7. Grand Isle, Louisiana. And if you've never been there, imagine a tiny strip of town that basically lives on the front porch of the Gulf. Beautiful, yes, but the deal you're signing up for is simple. Every hurricane season, you're betting your house, your insurance, and your entire routine. Here's why it keeps getting harder. At Grand Isle, the relative sea level rise has been measured around 9.2 millimeters per year. That's not a typo. It's not just the water going up, it's also the land is sinking. And when you project it out, one estimate puts sea level rise at about 17 inches from 2020 to 2050. That's the kind of number that sounds small until you realize storms don't need feet. They just need enough extra water to turn a bad day into a total mess. Now add the reality check, Hurricane Ida. Local reporting described a brutal aftermath. Nearly 90% of the camps were damaged or destroyed. Power wasn't out for a weekend, it was down for almost 3 months. They ended up putting about $80 million into upgrades just to make the grid less fragile. And if you're thinking, okay, rebuild and move on, here's the part people don't talk about enough. Housing. The mayor said the town basically lost all its apartments and rent got sky high. That's the hidden punch. It's not just repairing your place, it's finding anywhere to live while you repair your place. You can see the community shrink in real time. Grand Isle's K-12 student population reportedly dropped from 187 before Ida to 81 afterward. That's not just a school number. That's families deciding the math and the stress don't work anymore. And then there's insurance, the silent villain of coastal living. One local official talked about paying around $3,700 and then choosing to self-insure because the cost got too heavy. That's what worst living conditions looks like here, not chaos, but a repeating cycle where the price of staying keeps rising, even when your paycheck doesn't. Yes, there are defenses. There's talk of major protection projects, like a new levee around $120 million, plus breakwaters and dunes and all the things meant to buy time. And that's the honest word, buy time. Nobody is promising a forever fix. They're trying to keep the next storm from being the one that ends the town. Grand Isle isn't bad because the people are doing something wrong. It's bad because geography and physics don't negotiate. When the land sinks, the sea rises, and storms keep coming, daily life turns into a long-term recovery project. So Grand Isle makes the list because living here is like renewing a subscription every year. Except the subscription is to risk. And the question isn't, will a storm hit? The real question is, how many times can you rebuild before rebuilding stops being life and starts being a habit you can't afford? Number 6, Cairo, Illinois. And Cairo is one of those places that messes with your head because on a map it looks like it should have been rich forever. It sits right where the Ohio River meets the Mississippi. That's a build a town here and never lose kind of location. And yet Cairo feels like a town that's been slowly exhaling for decades. Here's what that looks like in real-life numbers. The median household income is about $35,493 a year, and the poverty rate sits around 21.5%. So before we even talk about floods or anything dramatic, a lot of people are already living with a tight budget and a thin margin for error. Now, hit this. The median property value is around $28,200. $28,000. In most of America, that's not even a decent used pickup truck. In Cairo, that's the typical house. And that's the signal. When homes are that cheap, it usually means the hard part isn't buying the place. It's living in a town where you're not sure what will still be open next year. Even work becomes its own quiet struggle. The average commute time is about 36.4 minutes, and around 7.55% of workers have what's called a super commute, meaning more than 90 minutes. That's wild for a small town. It's like the town can't provide enough stable jobs nearby, so people have to travel just to keep the lights on. And then Cairo has the extra weight that a lot of shrinking river towns carry: water. Flood risk isn't just a weather story here, it's a life story. Reporting on towns along the Mississippi has pointed out that flooding pushes people out at higher rates than the national average, over 30% higher in some analyses. And if your town is already struggling, a flood doesn't just ruin basements, it speeds up the decision to leave. And even the basics can turn into a heads-up situation. Cairo's water system has had periods where residents were told to boil water due to maintenance at the treatment plant. Think about that. In a town with low incomes, you don't just pay money, you pay attention. You're always watching the next notice, the next repair, the next interruption. Now here's the part that hurts a little, because it shows people still trying. Cairo worked hard to open a community grocery store, trying to break out of the food desert label. But in a place with low incomes and fewer people each year, even good solutions struggle to survive. It's like trying to keep a candle lit outside in the wind. One Reddit commenter described Cairo as a ghost town, abandoned neighborhoods, nearly empty shelves. That's harsh, but it captures the feeling. Not one big disaster, just a long series of small losses. Cairo isn't bad because the people don't care. Cairo is what happens when history moves on, jobs dry up, floods keep showing up, and the town has to keep functioning anyway. It's not a collapse, it's an erosion. And the scary question Cairo leaves you with is simple. How many little hits can a town take before getting by becomes the town's entire identity? Number 5. Petersburg, Virginia. Number 5 is Petersburg, Virginia. And this one is a tug of war. Because if you only look at one headline, you might think, oh, it's getting better. And in one very real way, it did. Petersburg went from 23 homicides in 2023 down to 11 in 2024. That's basically a 52% drop. Local reporting also said more than half of those 2024 cases involved arrests, and it cited a clearance rate around 64%. On paper, that sounds like a city finally turning a corner. But living conditions aren't a spreadsheet. They're what it feels like to get through a normal week. Start with money. The median household income is about $50,741, and the poverty rate is around 21.1%. So roughly 1 out of 5 people is living below the poverty line. That matters because when a community runs that tight, every small disruption hits harder. A missed shift, a car repair, a medical bill, and there's not a lot of cushion. Now layer housing on top. The median property value is about $157,900, which sounds affordable if you're comparing it to big cities. But then you look at rent. One recent estimate puts average rent around $1,205 a month. So if you're making about $50,000 a year, rent alone can start feeling like a second job. You're not saving, you're surviving. And that's before groceries, utilities, insurance, and the fact that you probably need a car. And yes, the unemployment rate in 2024 was around 4.8%, which doesn't look terrible at first glance. But here's the catch. Unemployment doesn't measure the stress of underpaid work, unstable hours, or the way one bad month can knock a household off balance when rent is already eating a big chunk of income. Now, zoom back to safety a while, because Petersburg's story isn't just crime is high or crime is low. It's that the city sits in a high violence category statewide. A Virginia JLARC report described Petersburg as having the highest average annual gun homicide rate in the state, and it pointed out something that hits families directly. chronic absenteeism in Petersburg schools around 40%. That's a living conditions number. That's what happens when kids and parents are dealing with instability, stress, and neighborhoods where routines get interrupted. So my neutral take is this: Petersburg is not a place where nothing is changing. It's a place where change is happening, but it's fighting uphill against old damage. A year like 2024 shows what's possible. But the weight people feel day to day comes from the long tail: poverty, housing pressure, and the way violence echoes through schools and family life even when the trend line improves. And that's why Petersburg makes this list. Not because it's hopeless, but because it's exhausting. It's a city trying to lift itself while still carrying the consequences. And the question is, when the numbers finally improve, how long does it take for life to actually feel safer, lighter, and normal? Number 4. Calexico, California. Number 4 is Calexico, California. And this one isn't about crime or empty buildings. This one is about something you can't punch, can't argue with, and can't just ignore: air. Calexico sits down in Imperial County, right on the border, and the first thing people don't expect is how heavy the air can feel. Like you step outside and your lungs go, "Oh, we're doing this today." Here's the simple, sticky truth. This whole area gets hammered in air quality rankings. The American Lung Association State of the Air puts the El Centro area, basically Imperial County's backyard, as the 17th worst in the country for high ozone days and 26th worst for short-term particle pollution. That's not a little California haze. That's your outdoor day has a warning label. And it's not just a vibe. The EPA has listed Imperial County as a non-attainment area for the 8-hour ozone standard, meaning the region doesn't consistently meet the federal health-based limit. Translation: this isn't people being dramatic. It's official. Now here's why this happens. A lot of people assume it's one smokestack somewhere, but in Imperial Valley the problem is bigger and messier. EPA analyses point out that windblown dust and fugitive dust make up about 98% of the PM10 emissions in the county. Add heavy traffic patterns tied to border movement, plus agriculture and local industry, and you get this perfect storm where the air isn't just bad sometimes. It becomes part of the lifestyle. And then you get to the part that makes this land emotionally kids. A 2024 study in the Imperial Valley reported asthma diagnoses in about 24% of children at enrollment. That's almost 1 in 4. Another local health source puts it as roughly 1 in 5 kids in Imperial County dealing with asthma. Either way, the point is the same. When the air is the problem, your normal includes inhalers, missed outdoor play, and that anxious parent glance at the sky like it's a forecast for breathing. Now zoom out to money, because this is where Calexico becomes a trap you can feel. The median household income is about $50,021, and the poverty rate is around 21%. So about 1 out of 5 people is already living tight. Meanwhile, the median property value is around $281,700. So you're not in a place where everyone can just pack up and move to clean air. If you're working, raising kids, paying rent, or a mortgage, you're anchored. Calexico isn't worst because it's hopeless. It's worst because it's exhausting. When your environment is working against your body and your budget keeps you stuck, daily life becomes a constant set of small compromises. And that's the question Calexico leaves you with. If the air itself is the problem, what does home even mean? The place you can afford, or the place where you can breathe? Number 3, Paradise, California. Number 3 is Paradise, California. And the name is almost cruel, because Paradise is basically a town that got wiped off the map and then told, "Okay, rebuild. Good luck." Back in 2018, the Camp Fire tore through here and became the deadliest and most destructive wildfire in California history. More than 18,000 structures were destroyed. That's not a few houses. That's an entire community getting hit with the reset button. Now here's the twist that keeps Paradise on this list. The town is rebuilding, but living here is like fighting a boss level that never ends. The town of Paradise has posted recovery updates showing real progress. As of December 18, 2024, about 3,137 building permits had been issued. Around 2,607 single-family homes had certificates of occupancy, and about 579 multifamily units were completed. So yes, roofs are back, streets are filling in. You can actually drive through and see life returning. But then comes the problem nobody wants to talk about at a backyard barbecue: insurance. AP reported stories from Paradise where people saw their homeowner's insurance jump from around $1,200 a year to about $9,750. Others were quoted near or above $10,000 a year, and some renewals hit around $14,000. Imagine finally rebuilding your home and then getting a bill that basically says, "Congratulations, now pay a used car every year just to keep living there." And this isn't happening to a town full of millionaires who can shrug it off. Data shows Paradise's median household income sits around $67,000, with a poverty rate around 18%. So almost 1 out of 5 people is already living tight. Now drop a 5-figure insurance bill into that budget and watch what it does. It turns normal life into constant math. Groceries versus premiums, repairs versus coverage, should we stay versus can we stay? Even the property numbers tell the weird story. The median property value is around $391,000. That sounds like stability until you realize a house can be worth that on paper, while the cost to insure it feels like a tax on your nerves. Population-wise, Paradise is coming back, but it's still a shadow of what it was. Local reporting, citing California's Department of Finance, said Paradise went from roughly 4,000 people in 2020 up to nearly 11,000 by 2024, still far below the roughly 26,000 before the fire. That's the scar in numbers, a town regrowing, but not fully returning. Paradise isn't worst because people don't love it. Paradise is worst because the risk has a price tag now. And that price tag is forcing families to make choices that don't feel fair. It's not just rebuilding a home, it's rebuilding a life under a clock that says wildfire season is coming back. So Paradise makes the list because it proves something uncomfortable. You can survive the fire and still lose the town to the costs that come after. And the question is, how many people can keep paying for the privilege of calling Paradise home? Number 2, East St. Louis, Illinois. Number 2 is East St. Louis, Illinois, and the strangest part is how close it is to a completely different world. You're literally a bridge away from St. Louis. One side has stadium lights and downtown energy. The other side has a kind of tension you can feel in the air, like the town has been stuck in recovering mode for way too long. Now, I want to say this carefully. The crime story here has a twist. Illinois State Police reported East St. Louis recorded 20 homicides in 2024. That's still a heavy number for a small city, but it was also the lowest in 6 years. They said it was down from 36 in 2019, and 2024 was about 26% lower than 2023. They also reported non-fatal shootings dropping to 57 in 2024, down from 121 in 2019. Another report pointed out the city had hit 37 homicides back in 2017. So yes, the trend line has moved in a better direction. But better direction isn't the same thing as good living conditions, because the deeper trap in East St. Louis is money. Median household income is about $30,992. Poverty is around 32.8%. That's basically 1 out of every 3 people living under the poverty line. And when a place has that kind of thin financial cushion, life becomes fragile. A car problem isn't annoying, it's catastrophic. A missed shift isn't inconvenient, it's rent. And then you get to the number that makes people sit up straight. Housing. The median property value is around $52,700. Zillow's typical home value is about $36,227 as of late 2025. Redfin shows a median sale price around $28,750 to $29,000 in the main zip area in December 2025. Those prices don't feel like a deal, they feel like a warning label, because a house isn't just a house. It's also the neighborhood it sits in, the services around it, the businesses that stay open, the repairs the city can afford, and the confidence people have about tomorrow. When homes are priced that low, it usually means demand collapsed, and rebuilding demand is the hardest kind of rebuilding. Even daily movement tells you something. The average commute is about 22.5 minutes, and roughly 70.7% of workers drive alone. It's not isolation like Alaska, but it's still a place where getting to what you need often means getting in the car. And if your income is around 31 grand, every mile costs more than it should. East St. Louis isn't a single-story town. It's a town where one set of numbers is improving, but the foundation numbers, poverty, income, housing collapse, keep the stuck feeling alive. It's like watching someone climb out of a hole while the ground is still crumbling under their feet. And that's why East St. Louis makes this list, because being close to opportunity isn't the same as having access to it. The bridge is short, the gap in daily life is not. And it makes you wonder, when a place has been hurting for so long, what does it actually take for safer to finally feel like livable? Number 1, Williamston, North Carolina. Number 1 is Williamston, North Carolina. And this is the kind of worst living condition story that doesn't need drama. It just needs one locked door. Because the real nightmare here is simple. The hospital shut down. Martin General Hospital stopped taking patients, even emergency patients. The hospital's own site says the nearest ER is ECU Health Beaufort Hospital in Washington, North Carolina, about 22 miles south. An AP described what that feels like in real life. People worrying that in a serious emergency, you're looking at roughly a 25-minute ambulance ride to the next closest place that can actually treat you. 25 minutes doesn't sound scary until you imagine it when your body is doing something you didn't schedule. A bad allergic reaction, a chest pain situation, a kid who can't breathe right. In Williamston, emergency care starts with distance, and it didn't happen out of nowhere. Before the hospital finally closed in August 2023, it had already been shrinking. It ended maternity services in 2019. It closed its ICU in 2021. That's like watching the lights go out room by room until one day the whole building goes dark. The hospital had been there for 73 years. Then suddenly, it wasn't. Now stack the money reality on top, because that's what turns this from sad to brutal. Williamston's median household income is about $40,556. The poverty rate is about 30.58%, so nearly 1 out of 3 people is already living on a thin margin. In that situation, why drive farther for health care isn't just inconvenient. It's expensive. Gas, missed work, child care, and if you're caring for an older parent, it's also time, and time becomes its own cost. Housing is the other quiet tell. Zillow puts typical home values around $121,000 as of late 2025, and it showed prices down about 8.7% year over year. Redfin's recent median sale price has been around $148,000. On paper, that sounds like a cheap place to buy a house. But here's the trade. When a town loses its hospital, the price you pay isn't always in the mortgage. It's in the anxiety tax. You're buying a home in a place where basic safety nets feel farther away. And it's not like everyone has endless job security to absorb the extra burden. Martin County's unemployment rate has been around 4.5% recently. Not a disaster number, but it doesn't change the fact that low incomes plus high poverty means most families don't have a big cushion for surprise costs. There is a push to bring the hospital back under a rural emergency hospital model, and local reporting has talked about a proposed recovery plan on the scale of about $220 million. That tells you two things at once. People want this badly, and it's going to take serious money to buy back normal. Williamston isn't worst because it's chaotic. It's worst because it lost the one thing that makes a town feel survivable. When you remove emergency care, you don't just change health care. You change the way people sleep at night. And that's why Williamston is number one. Because when a town loses its heartbeat, everything else starts feeling like it's running out of time. That's the top 10. And if there's one takeaway, it's this. Bad living conditions don't always look bad at first glance. Some places are postcard pretty, but regular people can't survive the costs. Others are so cheap they feel like an opportunity, when really it's a signal that the system is struggling. Long drives for healthcare, thin job markets, harsh environmental pressure, or disasters that keep coming back. And the part that should stick with you is this: people still live there every day, not because they don't know, but because they don't have an easier option. Now I want to hear from you. Out of these 10, which town made you stop and go, wait, for real? And if you had to pick one to live in for a year, which one would you choose and why? Drop it in the comments. If you like this kind of breakdown, real numbers plus real-life storytelling, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because the next one is already in the works.